Greetings everybody, welcome back to episode number 3 of this Redux course. In this episode we are going to delete an employee. So in the previous episode we kind of saw how we can edit an employee. In episode number 1 we added a new employee. We are showing a list of employees as well. So as you see we are moving towards implementing the CRUD operations create, read, update, delete completely. So in episode number 3, we are going to add the functionality to delete an employee from our local Redux store. So basically what we are going to do is to add an employee, delete employee reducer to our slice, right? And then we're going to dispatch this from our user interface, from our component, when the user clicks a delete button. I guess it makes more sense to kind of show you the application first and then go through the code. So this is the code that I've got. I'm on episode number 3. If I show you the code, the application, I can add different employees. And as you can see, next to each employee, there is this button called edit and there's this button called delete. So if I delete, as you can see, that employee will get deleted. And of course, I can update an employee as well as before, right? And then I can add new ones. I can also see the list of employees, and of course I can delete them. Now let's move to the code and of course our notes. So delete employee. This is the code that I've got in my slice, employee slice. Let me take you to Visual Studio Code and show you what I've done. So this is the slice that I've got here. So previously we added these two reducers. Now I've got this delete employee, which is a very easy one. So basically what we are doing inside of this is, again, we are checking the ID of the payload as we have also done here. But here we're not using find index, we're using filter. So basically what we are doing is that on this array called list, we are filtering the employee, the list, the list of employees, the array, and removing the employees whose ID, right, equals the ID that we get inside of the payload. So basically, we are removing one employee at a time from the list. So the new list, as you can see here, will contain all of the elements of the list array except for the ones whose ID match the ID that we are receiving in the payload. And if the IDs don't match, right, if the IDs don't match, that element is going to remain in the list. And finally, that list is going to be, assigned to state.list. Now, again, as before, we need to, export delete employee as well. As you can see here, we've got our CRUD operations in place, right? Add, edit, delete. Let me take a look at the notes to see if I've got anything to explain here. Yeah, I told you we're using the filter, function to exclude the employees with the given ID, right? This immutability updates a state list by removing the targeted employees. So we're not changing the list, right? Directly, but rather we're removing the employees and then we are assigning this back to the state.list again, right? So this is the immutability at work. So this line ensures your Redux state stays consistent and avoids mutating the original array, right? Now, for the delete button inside our component, this is the component. I'm not going to talk about the things that we already discovered and talked about in the previous episode. So we talked about this section. We talked about these, right? These are the same. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, please make sure you do watch them. We have talked about each one of these lines of code thoroughly throughout, over the past couple of videos. Now, we also talked about this. This is the new, event handler that I've got here. So this handle, delete, click is going to take in the ID of the employee that needs to be deleted. And then it's going to dispatch, right, this reducer, delete employee. It's going to dispatch this action, let's say. The function is going to get executed. And finally, it is going to check the editing ID. If the editing ID equals the ID that we are receiving inside of this function, we are going to set the name and set editing ID to their initial values. So basically, this line of code, right? This line of code is checking whether you are deleting an employee which you were, let's say, editing before. So if you go, let's say, to the application, right? Suppose I've got this employee, right? If I click this, right now I am in the middle of editing this employee. But now if I delete this, the employee goes away, and that is the moment that this piece of code will get executed. If the ID of the employee you intend to delete matches the ID of the employee you were in the middle of editing, right? We're gonna of course remove that employee, and we're gonna set name and set editing ID to their initial default values. Now this is the handler for deleting an employee, and this is the button. The button is gonna get created next to each li element. Whenever you map through that, employees, you're going to create this as well. And whenever someone clicks that, button, you're going to pass in the ID of the employee, right? And then you're going to kind of delete that employee, right? So again, what I want to point out here is the way we are calling this function. We are passing an object to delete employee, right? We are passing an object containing one key, which is the ID. And inside of our slice, if you take a look here, right, we are receiving that inside of our action payload.id. So action payload will be that object that we are passing to delete employee. And then inside of that object, we've got one key, one property called ID. So this is very important to remember, right? And let's move to the notes to see if we've got anything. Yeah, this is the thing that I talked about. It says if set we're in the edit mode for that employee's ID, right? And then the click handle delete click, right? When the deleted employee was being edited, when you were in the middle of editing an employee, which you just decided to delete, will clear the input. How? By setting null to the name state. And we exit the edit mode by again resetting the editing ID, right? So right now we've got our edit, we've got our delete, we've got our add, and so on. So that was the end of this episode. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. If that's the case, please make sure you give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.